You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Real Tree Game Day to those who celebrate. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're going to be joined momentarily by John Macon Gillespie, who's running a little bit late. He has a lot of stuff he's trying to do because Oxford apparently right now is an absolute zoo. If my boards are any indication, it is a zoo with the number of people that are running around Oxford, Mississippi today. So if you were heading to the ball game for an 11 o'clock kickoff, leave now. Leave as soon as possible. Give yourself an extra 30 minutes to an hour because apparently Oxford is populated at the moment. So yeah, people on my board all night was posting about how lit it was on the square and how many people were out and about. So if you see any Oklahoma fans, say hey. If you see Jay Smith out on the square from the Locked On Sooners podcast, say hey to him as well and give him a hearty hello from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Anyway, the keys in the game today. We've talked about this. We had shows all during the week about what this game could be and what this game would be. And well, like I said, we'll have John Macon Gillespie on in just a minute whenever he gets clear. He's like doing some last minute things. And if you're in the comments in Oxford or heading to the game, post what you're doing, post what's going on, post what you're hearing so that I can put that up on the screen for anybody looking to go to the football game as well. Since we're about 3.5 hours away from kickoff or 2.5 hours away from kickoff as well. So we'll see exactly how that goes. It's rough being in the Eastern time zone as well. I'm trying to do that math. So it should be pretty awesome for Ole Miss and Oklahoma fans. I enjoy this. I talked about this during the week. It is hard for me to find animosity for Oklahoma. There's just no history, none whatsoever. There's an Independence Bowl in 99. I told the story about my hotel catching on fire with my soon-to-be wife and all of that earlier in the week. There was the National Championship Baseball Game Series, but still, that's not quite the history that you would imagine. And Oklahoma eliminated Ole Miss in an NCAA basketball tournament, and that's essentially it. For two states that are so close together, this is the extent of the history. And now, don't get me wrong, Oklahoma has next to no history with Arkansas, and they're like 3 hours away from the Fayetteville campus, and they've played like 14 times in their history. So this isn't necessarily rare. This is just the realm that we live in where they were in the Big 8 and Big 12 for so long, and Ole Miss was in the SEC. We were very Southeast focused. They were very Midwest focused, and I guess Western, whatever you want to call Texas. So there's just not a lot of history between the two schools. So there's not a lot of animosity. And honestly, there shouldn't be. So enjoy your Oklahoma fans. I am glad that Oklahoma gets to come and get, honestly, their reward to come see the Grove and come see a game at Ole Miss. I understand all the tradition that everybody has. All the Ole Miss fans are going to get the reverse of that treat when they go to Norman next year. And odds are Oklahoma is going to be in a much better position in a year from now, considering right now they are a complete mash unit on their offensive line and at wide receiver. But Oklahoma is going to get better. The point is, this is a game that just about everybody should enjoy. There's no hatred. There's no rivalry mess. Ole Miss is favored by nearly 3 touchdowns over Oklahoma. This is the largest point spread that Oklahoma has ever been the underdog since Archie Manning was the last quarterback with a Manning name to quarterback at Ole Miss. It's 97. Since Deuce McAllister was going over the top, since John Avery was taking it 97 yards to the house, and Stuart Patridge, old friend Stuart Patridge, was being a machine at quarterback. It's been a minute since Oklahoma has been in the shape they're in right now. And this is more bad luck than going to the SEC, okay? I'm convinced about this. Everybody's going to say, see, the SEC is a different animal. No, that's not what's going on. Just everything that can go wrong for Oklahoma is going wrong. Imagine if Ole Miss lost their top 5 wide receivers. Imagine if Ole Miss had to play completely with their second string offensive line. What would that do to the Ole Miss offense? How would Ole Miss react to that? Oklahoma in this game is not going to have their starting running back either. Everything that can go wrong has gone wrong for Oklahoma this season. So let's not make any overarching things about what it can be. And I think Oklahoma is going to be all right. Let's bring in John Macon Gillespie to the program. John, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well, Stephen. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I was just explaining on the podcast two things that there's just absolutely no animosity that you can even fake towards Oklahoma fans because there's just no history. And the other thing is everybody with the extreme hot take of Oklahoma coming to the SEC. See, I told you, they've kind of got that wrong as well, because with all the injuries that they've had at very key positions, Ole Miss would look very, very differently if they were playing with a completely backup offensive line and they were down their top 5 wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that Oklahoma has really had some injury issues coming into today, and yeah, I mean they haven't looked good offensively, but I mean some of that can be credited to the injuries for sure. I mean, you look at that injury report from that came out last night, the updated one. All those wide receiver injuries. I mean, that's a lot to have to deal with. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't think there is any animosity between the two fan bases really at all, because I mean they've only played once in 1999. It was a close game, but I mean still, But I do think that it is going to be interesting seeing these two fan bases collide in Oxford today, because they're two passionate fan bases. It should be pretty fun.
I think it would be funny if like Oklahoma fans that got in late Friday night and came in and wanted to see the Grove before game day, and they got there just in time for the land grab. And the fact that the Oklahoma Sooners basically got their name from the United States government doing just that, the Oklahoma territory. I do think that is pretty cool. And I'd like to know what their thoughts and expressions were when they first saw that.
Yeah, that's I think the fan base is in for a lot of new SEC experiences this year, right? I mean, I think that's part of the fun of this conference realignment thing. I mean, I know it has its drawbacks, but as far as the SEC is concerned, Oklahoma and Texas fans being able to see some of these new traditions for new for them in the SEC has got to be pretty fun, and that's why I think that they have traveled so well to Oxford, is because they're wanting to experience this for the first time. I mean, they've never been able to. So yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting storyline there.
All right, and before we take the first break, we're doing this show a little bit earlier today because you need to get to Oxford, because you've heard that Oxford is a zoo. What is the latest you've heard about the pregame atmosphere, traffic, and all of that around Oxford?
Well, the last I heard, it was pretty hectic. I think that Oklahoma has brought a lot of fans, obviously. Because like I said, this is a new experience for that fan base. So yeah, and early kickoffs are always a little hectic with traffic because of people coming in that morning and everything. So yeah, I think if you're planning to get to the stadium today, you need to leave kind of early.
And you're heading from like Water Valley. You're heading up 7, right?
I'm going up through Bruce, up to
Okay.
Oxford. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew you were south of Oxford. I just didn't know where.
Yeah.
So, all right. Before we take the break in this situation, we're going to talk about that. What is the biggest surprise you saw in the injury report last night?
I don't know. Well, to me, it was one of not necessarily a surprise, but it's something that I'm going to be paying attention to, is Trey Harris still being questionable. That's something I think that's going to be pretty impactful if he's not able to go. I mean, the offense is going to change if he's not in there. My gut tells me he'll probably go, but I don't know that for sure. But I did think that was interesting because of how the offense has looked when he's not been in the game.
I think I'm gonna be honest about this, and there's going to be a lot of Ole Miss fans that are going to roll their eyes right now. I think that Ole Miss would benefit with not having Trey Harris for a game, as long as Ole Miss is game planned to not have Trey Harris for a game, and then just get used to that and reincorporate Trey into it. I think the whole offense could be a lot better, because this offense is so dependent right now on Trey Harris, and it's not a structural thing. It's almost a want to thing. Trey Harris is the best wide receiver in college football. Of course, Jackson Dart's going to look for him. Of course, they're going to scheme for him. But I do think Ole Miss needs to be a little bit more varied offensively.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely fair because when Trey has left the games early the last couple of weeks or the last couple of games, obviously the offense has looked very different because so much of the offense has seemed to run through Trey Harris. Yeah, I think that's more than fair that if Ole Miss can plan for him not being in the game, that could benefit the offense as a whole because they've got weapons. I mean, they can be efficient offensively without Trey Harris. They just haven't been. So yeah, I think that's more than fair.
All right, coming up next, we are going to get into the keys of the game with John Macon Gillespie, get his opinions on what's going to happen. And we're also going to talk a little Freddie Freeman and the World Series in segment 3. So stick around for that. Hey, sports fans, if you haven't tried Prize Picks, now's the time. Prize Picks is the best way to get real money action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. It's fast, easy, and fun, and you'll have your picks locked in within 60 seconds. Right now, you can win up to 100 times your money by nailing just 4 correct picks. Don't worry, if one of your picks does not hit, thanks to FlexPay, you can still cash out and double your money. What makes Prize Picks even better is the injury insurance policy. If one of your players leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your lineup stays live. No more ruined picks because of an unexpected injury. Sign up today at Prize Picks and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You can instantly when you play just $5. That's right. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So what are you waiting for? Run your game on Prize Pick. Turn your sports knowledge into real cash today. And have y'all ever heard of the South's favorite pickle? I'm talking about Stewart's Cajun Dill Pickles, of course. If you think you do not like pickles, that's probably because you haven't tried these. These pickles are so fresh and crunchy with just the right amount of Cajun kick to keep you coming back for more. And they're not just delicious, they're also handmade by a family-owned company on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, so every bite is packed with that authentic Southern flavor. But Stewart's doesn't stop at just pickles. They've got pickled green beans, okra, carrots, and asparagus too. They're perfect for spicing up your snack game. You can find these amazing products at Rouse's Market, Sullivan's, Corner Market in Hattiesburg, and even some Winn-Dixie along the Gulf Coast. Or if you prefer shopping online, head to thepickledstore.com. Make sure to give them a like and a follow on Facebook and Instagram. And when you shop local and try these pickles, I guarantee you will not be disappointed. Stewart's Cajun Dill Pickles, the South's favorite pickle. All right, John, we are back. And, you know, it's interesting. We're going to talk in segment 3 a little bit about Freddie Freeman's walk-off grand slam 10-year-old moment. Every 10-year-old's dream got to be lived out last night. We'll talk about that a little bit. But first of all, I want to talk about the keys to the game. One thing that I have been harping on essentially for the last, 4 or 5 days, because everybody knows I do like to intend to repeat myself when I believe something, is the Ole Miss defensive line against the Oklahoma offensive line. I'm going to put these stats out here. This is what Ole Miss is doing sacks-wise. They're number 7 in the country in sacks. They are number 2 in tackles for loss, and their scoring defense is number 2 nationally at 10.57. Well, here's the Oklahoma numbers, who's given up the second most sacks in the entire country at 29. Their run offense is number 114 at 112 yards a game, and they're only scoring 22.1 points, which is good for number 107 nationally. And that scoring number is even a little deceptive because they put up a lot of points against like Temple. So my thing is, John, this Ole Miss defensive line has a chance to honestly stat pad, and they can completely wreck this game as far as Oklahoma offensively.
I think you're right. I think that it would be a little foolish to overlook that for sure because, I think that Ole Miss's defensive line so far this season has been one of the best, if not the best, strength of this team. And going up against an Oklahoma team that has struggled up front offensively, I think that's huge, right? I mean, Ole Miss's front 7 has been able to really, really lock down on the run game, been able to put pressure on the quarterback, all that kind of stuff. And if Oklahoma is giving up a lot of those things, that's not a good matchup for the Sooners today.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what happens with Princely and Monmielen listed as probable in the injury report, which means he's going to play. Sontaran Perkins has become the monster that Ole Miss has been waiting on him to become. This defensive line, and especially that position, that might be the strength of the whole team. When you look at the third string player is probably Chris Hardy, who was an all-conference USA player a year ago and had 25 tackles for loss or some ludicrous number. He's running third team at that jack position.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and Perkins, when he's gotten his opportunities now these last few weeks, I mean, he's obviously been incredible. But having Princely and Monmielen back in the game, I mean, it's just going to boost that front seven. Yeah, I think that's a really good point of the depth that Ole Miss has at that position because, like you say, Chris Hardy is a really really good player, but it says a lot that he's running third team, behind Perkins and Iman Mielon. So, yeah, if Iman Mielon's able to go today, which it looks like he will, I think that's going to be really problematic for Oklahoma.
The negative on the injury report is Jaden Williams, the left tackle, has been moved out. A lot of the rumor was going up to this game that he might see action, but it looks like he's going to be out again against an Oklahoma unit that is, I think, second in the nation in sacks. Listen, this Oklahoma defense is good. Don't let anybody fool you. As bad as their offense has been, their defense has been pretty good. And if it wasn't for a true freshman having true freshman moments in the first 6 minutes of last week's game between South Carolina and Oklahoma, Oklahoma has outscored a total of 14-9 in that game. So that score was at least a little bit deceptive. We talked about Diego Pounds only giving up one sack or actually gave up no sacks, and Ole Miss only gave up one sack against South Carolina. Against LSU, they were more problematic than that. Are you worried about the outside containing the Oklahoma line because they do like to blitz from different places in different ways?
Yeah, I think I am a little bit, honestly. I do think that's a little problematic. We talked about the injury report a little while ago. Jaden Williams being out today is big for Ole Miss. I mean, it really is because the offensive line has been an issue off and on during conference play, and him not being able to go today is not great. Now, I do think that if we're looking at the battle in the trenches, I think Ole Miss has the advantage overall in that their defensive line against Oklahoma's offensive line is a bigger deal than Oklahoma's defensive line against Ole Miss's offensive line. So, but still, yes, I do think that is an issue. I think that's something that you definitely should pay attention to today.
All right. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your number one choice in the morning. We'll be back with a little bit more on the pregame show and get into your comments of what's going on in Oxford. And we'll also talk about Freddie Freeman's magical World Series night as well. So stick around for that. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's number one sports book. Ole Miss is favored by 20.5 points against the Oklahoma Sooners, despite the over-under being at, I think, 49.5 right now. That's around a 35-14, 36-14 type score that they're predicting for Ole Miss. Honestly, that makes a little bit of sense if you look at the way the season has gone. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view latest play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, and you can place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, John. Now, before we get started and go into comments real quick, did you see the World Series game last night?
I didn't get to watch it, but I did see Freddie Freeman's grand slam on social media. It's a difficult position for a Braves fan to see that happen. Obviously, I have great memories of Freddie Freeman in an Atlanta uniform. He's obviously a great guy. It is a really cool moment because, like you said earlier, that is something you dream about as a child, hitting a walk-off grand slam in the World Series. So, yeah, I mean it's a really cool moment for baseball for sure. Being a Braves fan, I wish that it had not been the Dodgers and Yankees in the World Series, but nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, it's a situation where Major League Baseball, they're going to reap the rewards of having these two teams this year. There's going to be moments like this, and then the walk-offs and everybody talking about it. Everybody, the rumors of baseball's death may be a little bit premature because it looks to be bouncing back pretty good as you judge by the buzz on the internet right now. David Chambers is saying that there's over 400,000 people in Oxford right now, which is absolutely nuts to think about.
Yeah, Oxford's not built to hold that many people.
No,
I'd be curious to see where he got those numbers from for sure, but I do think that
probably
uh,
walking around the square, but yeah.
yeah, I mean that's still insane. I mean, Oxford's not built to hold that much.
Yeah. He also said, we're trying to make the Sooner fans feel welcome in the first visit. Please, Rebs, make them feel welcome. She'll show some class here, which, okay. Zachary Turba says, I'll be there to turn the tides on the season. And we got a pretty good showing here in the Grove, though. So that's good, because one thing that I've worried about, John, is Oklahoma gets the reward of getting to go to Oxford. Because you either Texas or Oklahoma, the reward was going to be traveling to Ole Miss in the first game. You weren't going to get to host Ole Miss because the Grove is a reward for new teams coming in. But this not being a night game or even a 2:30 game, I was worried about people walking through the Grove and seeing tents down at half level and all of that. And it was like, well, the Grove isn't that big of a deal. And it's like, yeah, it was an 11 o'clock game and you didn't see the Grove. So it's good to know that they're kind of turning out.
Yeah, I thought about that too because it's definitely different for an early kick as opposed to 2:30, 6 o'clock, anything like that. Uh, yeah, I am glad to hear that for sure.
Mark Walsh says, let's go. Need a blowout, hoping for a more comprehensive offensive game plan. Mark from St. Louis. Conversations happening in the chats. That's what they thought in the College World Series too. So that's the little bit of history, I guess, that people can't draw back on is the College World Series. Rebels do show up and we do show out. Hotty toddy. And Alan Beck said Lane has left too much talent off the field. Open the playbook and turn this group loose. I think that is a major key that Ole Miss fans need to watch out for in this game.
I think so too. I think that kind of like we were talking about earlier with the Trey Harris situation, that Ole Miss has not necessarily taken advantage of some of its weapons that it has. As far as schematics and things like that. I think that's going to be really key today, is especially if Trey Harris can't go. But even if he can, I think the offense needs to be able to scheme things outside of just Trey Harris, because it's almost like you become one dimensional at that point if everything is going through Trey Harris. So, yeah, I agree with that take, actually.
If somebody's about to head into Oxford from Memphis or Batesville or wherever they're having to stay in a hotel, is there any areas that they should avoid in Oxford today?
Uh,
Driving through?
Driving through, well, I don't know if you can necessarily avoid it, but I know that getting on to like Old Taylor and Chucky Mullins and that kind of thing is usually pretty rough at this time of day. But obviously, if you've got to get on campus, so I don't know that you can necessarily avoid that coming from that direction. But it's usually pretty backed up. I do think OPD has done a few things today. I think I saw on social media that's going to try to alleviate some of that traffic flow. We'll see if it works, because I mean, there's only so much you can do if there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people there today.
Yeah, and is there some kind of construction on 7 that people need to be aware of?
Not coming from my direction, I don't
Or
think. Not coming.
something, because I saw something online yesterday about being 1 lane.
Oh, what I understood that to be was to alleviate traffic flow, but I'm not 100. I may have misread that. I'm not sure. There may be some construction that I'm just not aware of, but coming from my direction, I haven't noticed that. But that's the south end of Oxford. So
Okay. That's good to know. Like normally, the traffic cop and everything, since there's so many people in Oxford, I guess I figured I would try and like tell people places to avoid. I know last night around Wellsgate on 6, there was an accident, but I'm sure that's cleaned up by now. But be safe, everybody heading into Oxford. All right, before we get out of here, give me some keys to this game. Give me some things you're looking for.
Well, I think that it's really going to come down to the trenches. I know that Oklahoma's offense has been anemic this year, right? Especially in conference play. But I think that this is really going to come down to the trenches. I mean, Oklahoma is in turmoil on offense as far as changes and things like that go. You can view that one of two ways. It's either going to be a breath of fresh air for them, and they're going to get a little bit better, or things are going to continue going the direction that they have been. So. But I think the battle in the trenches, Ole Miss needs to protect Jackson Dart today. They need to keep him upright, keep him not under pressure so that he can go through his progressions, open up some holes for the running game. It looks like we'll probably see some more Ulysses Bentley today since Matt Jones is not going to go. That'll be big. And from Ole Miss's perspective on defense, I mean, you've got to get in the backfield. Oklahoma has shown that they're kind of porous along that offensive line. You've got to get in the backfield, make Jackson Arnold uncomfortable, and clog up those running lanes.
I think this is a big game for Chris Paul.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a major game for him because he is the designated blitzer on that defense for people who 7 games in still do not know what's going on. So we'll see what's up. So they're saying that University Avenue is at 1 lane right now. That's what it is.
Okay. Well, now that can be problematic too, for sure, because University Avenue is sometimes a little crowded anyway, just on a normal day. So game day with it being 1 lane, that's going to be a little rough.
So avoid University Avenue and maybe go to, if you're coming down 7, maybe take, what is that, Molly Bar? Is that the road going in? Take the back way into campus?
Yes.
And just to avoid University altogether is what I would recommend. I think that it will be very interesting to see what Joe John Finley does. You mentioned that earlier with Jackson Arnold. I assume that Oklahoma is going to look a lot more like they did with Jeff Lebby than they did with Seth Luttrell. That's just because Joe John Finley, that's the way he knows to call a game. That's the way he's always seen it done. That's what he's going to do. Now, it might be called the plays, same stuff, and there might be a limitation on plays and things like that because you can't put in a whole system. But I think Oklahoma is going to run the ball, even if they can't do it. It's going to be a culture-building exercise of running physically. And even if it doesn't work this week, this is about trying to get to a bowl game, not trying to win this week. And I think you're going to see quick passes, bubbles, tunnels, hitches, things like that on the outside in order to protect Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really kind of an extension of the running game in a sense. So, yeah, if you're an Oklahoma fan, I mean, you're coming into this thing, a 20.5-point underdog. You're probably not coming into today thinking, okay, yes, we've got a shot to win this thing. Which, I mean, that it's the SEC. I mean, you technically do have a shot to win this game, but
that's about what the Kentucky line was.
Right. I mean, exactly. So, I mean, it's not like this is unheard of. So. But you can't make today the be all end all of your season. Okay. I mean, now that you've changed offensive coordinators, you've changed play callers, you've got to kind of build towards trying to get to that 6th win. Because I did a segment with Sooners on SI earlier this week, and I think it's been 20 something years since Oklahoma was not in a bowl game. It's pretty insane. So, yeah, I mean, that's something that they've got to build towards and try to get in.
I don't know if they've been this big of an underdog in your lifetime. I do not know when you were born, but there's a chance. It's been since 97.
I was born in 98.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last time the Sooners were this big of an underdog was in 97. Oklahoma won that game, by the way.
Did they?
Yeah.
Well, that bodes well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was born in 98, so no, I was not alive. So that's interesting. Yeah, little history today.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, what do you got going on Ole Miss SI today?
Gonna have in-game updates on our website. That'll be always interesting. I'll be manning that in the press box today. I'm the only one of us that's credentialed today because the press box is going to be so packed. They're going to have to accommodate for a ton of visiting media, it sounds like, and obviously those of us who are there every week. So we're going to have that. Going to have in-game breaking news. If anything happens during the game, that's big up on the site. Then obviously we're going to have halftime recap, gamer at the end, and then some post-game content throughout the night and into tomorrow morning.
All right, check out John Macon Gillespie on Ole Miss on SI. Is J Make Gillespie on Twitter. Check him out there. You can find out everything that's going on, and also follow Ole Miss on SI on Twitter as well. Anyway, John, be safe heading to Oxford. I know you're probably going to run out the door right now, and everybody watching this show that's heading to the game, please be careful and everything. John, we'll see you there. Good. Be careful, man.
All right. Appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you.